everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about different types of fractions, what they are, and a few examples to go along with them. Now, there are a lot of different fractions, but don't let that intimidate you. I'm going to be here to guide you step by step, and we're going to really learn the difference between all of them. Now, this can serve as a introductory to fractions, or if you just want to expand your knowledge on all types of fractions and what they could be, then that's all right too, and that's actually amazing. The goal here is to learn and take something away from this video, ultimately. So, starting off strong, we do want to know that the types of fractions that there could be. So, starting off, we have a proper fraction, an improper fraction, a mixed number or a mixed fraction, however you want to call it, equivalent fractions, alike fractions, or they also call it like fractions, unlike fractions, unit fractions, and complex fractions. Now, when you go into algebra and even some geometry, you will see that fractions are your best friend, ultimately in algebra, though. And you will use fractions in linear equations, which is something you get further along the line. But that's not what we're focusing on today. Today, we're going to be learning what these fractions are and what they look like so we know how to spot them out when we're solving something. But it is important that we know the basics of a fraction, which is ultimately the anatomy of a fraction. So, when I have a fraction, I have two numbers, one at the top and one at the bottom of that middle line. So in place of a number, I put A and B. So at the top, I have A, which is my numerator. The top of that fraction is going to be the numerator. The bottom of that fraction, which is in place of B, is going to be your denominator. And that's very important that you know that because this applies to all fractions. The way this fraction is set up applies to all fractions. So now that we know that, let's start with our very first fraction. I have a proper fraction. A proper fraction, to simply put it, is a fraction that has a smaller numerator and a bigger denominator. For example, this could be 4 over 8, 10 over 100, or even 3 over 15. The top number is the smaller, which is the numerator, and the bottom number, which is the denominator, is bigger than that top number. That is what makes a fraction proper. Going on to an improper fraction, this fraction has a bigger numerator and a smaller denominator, so the opposite of a proper fraction. This could be 30 over 10, 5 over 2, or even 90 over 60. All of these have a numerator that's the bigger number compared to the denominator. That's what makes this fraction improper. Now, if I want to go on to a mixed fraction, this fraction consists of a whole number and a proper fraction. So now you're combining a new idea with a previous idea that we just went over. So, and just so you know, once again, to make sure it's really stuck with you, a proper fraction has a smaller numerator and a bigger denominator. That is what makes a fraction mixed alongside that whole number. So make sure you include a whole number and a proper fraction. This could be 7 for your whole number and 3 over 6 as your proper fraction. This is your mixed fraction. That's how you know it's a mixed fraction. Moving on to equivalent fraction, this essentially means that the numerator and the denominator are different, but they are still equal to the same thing. So they are equivalent to each other. It's in its name. They are similar to each other. They still can get you to the same thing, they just look completely different. This could be 1 over 2 and 4 over 8. These are both equivalent, and let me show you why they are equivalent. So you can do this dividing, which is by their greatest common factor. So I have 4 divided by 4, 8 divided by 4, and when I divide those, I get 1 over 2. So these are equivalent. Now let me show you a more visual example. You've probably seen these in elementary school, for example, a fraction bar. So this very first fraction bar, I have 1/2, right? This fraction bar is split into twos, and that's 1/2, okay? So let's say I want to fill in that 1/2 to represent our fraction earlier, 1/2. Now I'm going to draw another fraction box, but this box is going to be cut into eighths. Now what if I shade in 4 boxes out of that 8? Now, when looking at this, I see that that 4 over 8 takes up the same amount of coloring as the 1/2. That is how I know that this fraction is equivalent. And even going back earlier, if I divide that 4 over 8 by its greatest common factor, I get 1 over 2. So while they look different, they're essentially alike and they will get you to the same thing. That is what makes them an equivalent fraction. Ultimately, that is what an equivalent fraction is. Now, moving on to alike fractions. Alike fractions are characterized by having multiple fractions, two or more, that have the same denominator, just different numerators. This could, for example, be 5 over 10. And then I could have 15 over 10, or I could even have 20 over 10. They all have that same denominator, which is 10. They just have different top numbers, which are their numerators. So they're all alike. And it's very important that you remember that for alike, different numerators, same denominators. That's all alike is. Now, if we wanted to talk about unlike fractions, then we know that these are fractions with different denominators. They're the opposite of alike fractions. Their denominators are not alike at all when you compare them to two or more fractions. So I have 1 over 2, 12 over 7, and I even have 4 over 3. As I see, they all have different denominators. These are unlike fractions. And I don't believe any of these are equivalent to each other either. So they are unlike fractions. Now, if I want to talk about unit fractions, these are essentially fractions that have 1 for their numerator. That's how I know it's a unit fraction. They have 1 on top. So I have 1 over 2, 1 over 16, and 1 over 9. These are all unit fractions because of that 1 on top. Now, if I want to go into something a little bit more harder, I will talk about complex fractions. And you will mainly see these if you're trying to differentiate. They do come on a few tests for sure, and I will have another video on how to solve complex fractions if you want to learn more about that. But for today, we're just going to learn what it is. So a complex fraction, it's where the denominator or the numerator has one or more fractions. Okay, so starting off, I have 5 over 6. That's a one fraction by itself. Now I'm going to have 7 over 8 at the bottom. Do you see how that 5 over 6 is like the numerator and that 7 over 8 is like the denominator? These are two fractions being divided by each other, and this fraction has more fractions within the fraction. That is how I know it's a complex fraction. Now, if I want to even go as far as to say 1 over 3 over 16, that 1 over 3 is the numerator fraction, and that 16 is my bottom denominator. This fraction has two fractions. Even if I want to go on and say 7 over 2 over 14, that 7 is my numerator, and that 2 over 14 is my denominator fraction. Once again, it consists of two fractions within one big fraction. That's essentially what a complex fraction is. It has multiple fractions in one form. So, that is all for today. I hope you guys can take something away from this, learning what different fractions are. And if you guys would, check out my other videos for more math help. And this is Ari, the math tutor, signing out. Bye.